Constitution's engagement with HMS Guerriere on August 19, 1812. They were commissioned by Captain Isaac Hull himself, so Victor, coming home, commissions the most celebrated marine artist of his day to memorialize this victory. What I've just handed out is a selection from the logbook of Constitution, and it's amazing actually how closely these follow the entries in the log. So we start here with the approach, with Constitution here, Guerriere here, and it actually says in the log, at 5 p.m., the frigate laid her main topsail to the mast. And that's what's happening right here. They backed the sail to slow them down. Took in our topgallant sails, staysails, flying jib, hauled the courses up, took second reef in the topsails, and sent down the royal yards. And that's what you see the crew of Constitution doing here. All the men are aloft in the topsail yard. They're reefing that sail. They're in the act of sending down the royal yards. You see the big commissioning pennant flying out here, and the courses, the lower sails, have been brailed up. And then he says, got all snug and ready for action and beat to quarters, at which our crew gave 3 cheers. So we go to the next scene here, and this is the ship in close action. Again, if we go back to the log, at 5 minutes after 6, hauled down the jib and laid the main topsail, shivering, and opened on him a heavy fire from all our guns. At 15 minutes after 6 p.m., the enemy's mizzenmast fell over the side. That's what we see happening right here. Sad time for those people up in the yard there. Corday, of course, is depicting the most important part of the battle, because once that mizzenmast goes over the side, basically Guerriere loses all control and has a very hard time maneuvering. So enemy's mizzenmast fell over the starboard side, at which our crew gave 3 cheers. We then, fore-reaching on him, attempted raking of his bow, but our braces being shot away, and jib halyards we could not effect it. He immediately attempted raking our stern, but failed also, but getting one of his guns to bear upon us, which he discharged with little or no effect. So this terrible cannonade is happening here. Look at the smoke. I mean, remember we were talking about that when we were on the gun deck in Constitution, the amount of smoke that would have risen up after one of these battles or during one of these battles. And he's done a great job depicting that here also. So finally we get to the third scene here. Our vessel, having way on her, shot clear of him when immediately, it being then 30 minutes after 6 p.m., his fore and mainmast fell over on the starboard side. And that's what, again, Corneille is depicting here, the mainmast, the foremast falling over the side. Constitution, all the Marines are aft here on the quarterdeck firing onto Guerriere's decks. And then finally, the last scene, set from the log again, we set our fore and main course. So they've dropped the 2 lower sails there, stood to the eastward and took 1 reef in the topsails in order to reeve our braces and halyards, which had been shot away, during which time the enemy, a complete wreck, under his spritsail, fired a gun in token of submission to leeward, which we answered as soon as our topsails were set and our braces rove by wearing ship. So you can see here the puff of smoke from Guerriere's bow, firing that lee gun as an act of submission. Normally, in a battle, you would haul down your colors, you haul down your flag, but obviously there are no mast left to do that, so this was the alternative way of signaling that I have surrendered. So a wonderful work. It was produced very quickly. Corneille got the commission in September. It was mostly done by December of 1812, so he was working very quickly. The first sketches that he produced were not to the liking of Hull, and he actually sent his friend, Purser Thomas Chew, to chastise the artist, along with Gilbert Stuart, to say, it's not quite right, why don't you fix this, fix this, fix this. And finally, he got sketches that he liked, and these are the resulting paintings. These were extremely popular in their day. They were engraved and appeared in many publications. They were produced actually in larger scale, some of them that were 25 feet tall, and they were used sort of as rotating panoramas to depict the scenes of the action. All the major naval battles of the war, the American victories, were often depicted in this fashion. So,
Are there any questions about it? What, did Hull keep the thing as in his home, the actual original?
I'm not sure actually of the lineage of these. There's at least two sets. So the Naval Academy has another. These I believe come from the Old Colony Historical Society.
Yeah, these were the original ones, and they were at Yale at some point in time, the Yale Art Museum. And then these are in better shape than the ones that went to the Naval Academy, just because the workers are better than in private collections. But the other ones, I'm not sure if they're still at the Naval Academy or not.
Yeah, they are.
And then, of course, everybody, as you mentioned, copies. So George Ropes, the student, made a copy of these, and but there's differences, right? Your fourth is different, right?
They are. Ropes work at a much smaller scale for his battle scenes. Ours are only about this big, and he's made them actually more dramatic, I think. He has the approach, he has the battle, then he has Guerriere fully surrender, and then the last one he's depicted Guerriere being set on fire. So Constitution's sailing away into the sunset, and Guerriere has these huge flames leaping out of her. So, and that's what happened to the ship. It was so badly damaged that Hull thought they could never get it back to Boston. Took out all the prisoners, took out all sorts of things from the ship, and then set it on fire.
What I think is, I really love about this particular one here, so when you get up and move around, take a look, he really has all of the sailors and all of the prisoners and everything in this everybody on the ship here. So you basically covered all the kinds of things. I liked, I was trying to find the names. I think each one has a more dramatic name. Oh, I love the last one, dropping astern. She fell in the sea, a perfect wreck. And then the engagement in action, those are in a perfect wreck. Now, remember we talked about the Neapolitan style painting, so you do see that. Now you see this pinky, well, a lot of pinky even in the battle, and the great contrast between the dark and the light. Now this is the larger, no, that Carlin Shields Wharf is a pretty big set of painting too. But somehow to me the waves in this one look bigger, and of course you're in battle and you're in the big sea. But a lot of, I think, other George Ropes paintings, which we'll see, I think his waves are just a little more tight and compact.
And the Ropes of these four series, I think he does a really interesting thing. He looks, I mean, as Matt said, these were painted extremely quickly by Cornet, and we can only imagine that Ropes was also thereby painting really quickly following his master, taking a couple of different liberties with it. He also didn't have the pressures of Hull saying, you got it wrong, or yes, you got it right. So a little bit more artistic liberty there, perhaps. And the sea is really treated very interestingly. And I do talk about visual thinking strategies with students in those four paintings, which, by the way, are all available on the citizenslife.org. You can just download the news in your class teaching. The kids often look at the four, and that's what they'll remark on, that the sea is really calm in the beginning, and it gets really rough during the battle, and then it is calm again at the end of the battle, which in Ropes paintings is, in fact, the next day, because they don't set the magazine on fire until the following day once they've removed all the prisoners and supplies off of the area.
So when Corday sent the sketches to Hull, do you have the record what Hull said to him? I'm just wondering if the sea's height accurate, because he would have reported that.
Here's the annoying thing.
Yeah.
The whole series of letters that described Hull's back and forth with the artist were sold by an auction company in 1963. All we have is the catalog description of what was in the letters. We don't have the actual text of the letters themselves. So it seems that he had a lot of problems with the initial sketches, but nobody has seen the letters, so we don't know exactly. Yeah, so keep your eye on it.
I'm sure it was like rigging kind of stuff, because that's what painters often get wrong.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if we look at the details of the painting, it was obviously done with somebody who understood these ships. I mean, you look at some artists' work and things don't make sense. Just the way the sails are set, or the way the flag is furled. Right. But on these, the seaman's eye was definitely involved in creating these, I think. There's no doubt about it.
Deborah's got a great idea.
I don't know. I was just thinking, I don't know if the museum, but I just as Matt was
reading here, I just thought it would be interesting if they took the text from the logbooks and somehow printed it on the wall above each picture, so that.
Yeah, that would be, well, you notice, I'll give you sheets back, and I'm going to want to at least put in those in the library to share and owners.
You keep them all.
Oh, I mean,
Yeah,
come on. You don't have to ask me twice.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something we could do as a museum, and that's something you could ask your students to do. I mean, there's a lot of mumbo jumbo in here that they wouldn't necessarily be familiar with, and so you have to give a lot of definition. But it would be kind of neat to see if can they pull out the 4 major portions and match them to the 4 paintings.
What I like to do too, especially old middle school is the biggest group of students we have usually here, are middle school kids, but I like to try to, because kids are learning about War of 1812, and high school students should have a better sense of that. But I try to explain about why this was such a big deal, and the Queen's, His Majesty in 18. Yeah. I mean, the British Navy was the largest navy in the world, and for this ship from a small country with a small navy, it was sort of like, if you're from Massachusetts, it's like I was at Linfield High School playing New England Patriots, that kind of thing, just to get a sense of the reason this was such an important thing for the U.S. Navy as well as the ship itself. Cornet was credited, this is just a little fun fact, Cornet was credited with bringing the tomato to the United States from Italy. Just let's see, yes. Tomatoes have been grown for human consumption in Thomas Jefferson's garden in 1806, so he wasn't the first, but the artist maybe deserves a local credit for having introduced tomatoes to people in Jack Carroll.
His house still stands in Newport, he moved to Newport in 1822, and the sign on the house, it doesn't say anything about all of his artwork, it says he introduced the tomatoes.
So if you leave with nothing else from the War of 1812 workshop, it's like
The tomato artist was, the artist was the tomato man. All right, before we leave this little area here, as you walk by, first of course, look at the paintings again, but also take a look, there's 2 sets of vases here, and remember, Matt mentioned that this was reproduced everywhere. There's even the 3rd set here is reproduced on this vase right over here. So